Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. It's been a while since I've done a video. It's that time of year where I'm torn between getting honey retail sales done at craft fairs. 3 weekends in a row I've got to do that, and a good deal of the week in between is preparing product for selling the next weekend. And also the other thing I should be doing at this time of year is mite treatment. And of course, it never pays to be late with your mite treatments. However, we had a bit of a very unusual fall here. We're saying unusual, it's been getting more and more common every year. And that is, it's been a very warm fall. I'd say it's been in the 60s most of the day, most days, maybe in the high 50s, which means, let's see, in centigrade, that would be in the mid-teens centigrade. And that means it's warm enough for the bees to fly, and therefore warm enough for the bees to rob. And so if the bees can steal from each other, that means that your nice, clean, healthy hive that you've treated for mites can go and steal from hives that are dying from mite overload and bring in a whole boatload of new mites. And so with your last treatment of the year, the oxalic acid, it often pays to wait until that time has passed so that the bees it's now too cold for bees to rob from each other, and then you can get your mite treatments done. Provided your hives are already relatively low on mites, this mite treatment now is mopping up those mites that they may have accumulated from robbing other hives. Oxalic acid works well at this time of year normally because in most cases there's no brood now. Hopefully the warm weather we've had didn't have prolonged the brood rearing period. It may have done. If so, a treatment later in the season, maybe in the winter, may be even helpful as well. But what we have at the moment is, I've still got feeders on that I've got to take off. They've been empty for some time now. These colonies, bar 2 of them, are all single brood chamber hives, and they are ready for their last mite treatment of the year. What I hope is their last mite treatment. They had Formic Pro earlier in the fall, and they may have picked up mites. And what we want to do is treat them with oxalic acid, which doesn't penetrate the brood. And I'm going to treat them with my sublimator. The sublimator is basically a heating element. This is made locally by a guy here in Maine. You put your oxalic acid in the heating, well, you put your oxalic acid in one of these stoppers, the appropriate dose. This sits on top of the hive, like that. This gets plugged in. I brought a generator along with me. And when you're ready, when it's got up to temperature, which is not on obviously at the moment, and that temperature is, well, typically above 230 degrees. I probably run mine more at 235. Then I will put the stopper in, turn it over, and now the oxalic acid drops into the chamber and starts blowing out this little jet here. I've tried a modification now. I've put some insulation wrap on the heating element, because I've been finding that it drops in temperature so quickly that there's always an element, the chance that this blocks up because the oxalic acid condenses on this, because I've got a particularly long tube to reach over my landing boards. So what I had been doing is putting a towel over it. That's why my towels are all burnt, to try and stop it losing too much heat in between goes. I'm hoping that without the towel and with this insulation, it's going to be shorter intervals between the time I can actually run the sublimator, because it'll heat up more quickly back up to temperature. So what I'm going to be doing, most of you may, if you're hobbyist beekeepers, you'll be using one of these gadgets, which is a oxalic acid vaporizer. The appropriate dose of oxalic acid goes into the heating element, which gets stuck into the entrance of the hive, and this end is attached to a car battery or the equivalent. And a good battery like that could probably run 2 oxalic acid vaporizers at the same time, no problem. I often did that. And The vapor goes into the hive, forms crystals throughout the colony, forming crystals of oxalic acid as it recondenses onto the mites. The mites can't cope with that and they die. Generally speaking, the bees are relatively unharmed, and compared with other mite treatments, the oxalic acid seems to be about the most gentle treatment we have going. But it does not penetrate the brood. And the other thing is, now that the weather's cooled down a lot, I now have to wait until the temperature gets up a bit, because it's only about 40 degrees now, and at about 37 these bees will be clustering, and the cluster would be too tight for the oxalic acid to go into. So I've had to wait until about 11 in the morning now for the bees to warm up a bit sufficiently that a few are starting to fly, but the cluster's now broken up so the vapors of the oxalic acid can go and permeate the whole cluster and treat all of the bees as opposed to just the outside ones. So oxalic acid vaporization works pretty well down to about 37 degrees. I think if it gets much colder than that, I'll have to rely on the drizzle method and dribbling a solution of oxalic acid onto the frames, the seams of bees themselves. Anyway, I'm going to get set up and do a bit of treatment. See, it's not going to show well on a video, but that says 89 going up to 90, 91, 92, going up in temperature. That's in degrees centigrade. And the reason my voice sounds really weird because I'm wearing a fume mask to filter out organic acids. So I won't be doing too much talking during this, because you won't be able to hear me very well. So let it warm up and we'll get on with it. Temperature is dropping. It's got down to 202. Once all the acid is vaporized, the temperature will start going up again. Now it's going up. So it's vaporized almost all the acid. Give it another few seconds. oxalic acid I'm using. Temperature's up the temperature. We put the towel on to keep the fumes in as best we can. Now the recommended dosage is 1 gram for deep super. However, a lot of work's been done that's shown that a higher dosage can work better, and I'm not recommending a higher dosage. I just happen to use them. Well, there we go. There's this yard treated. And just 7 more to go. So what I'm going to do is take the sublimator home, tighten up and maybe wire down that insulation on it, but it's really working well. Last year what it tended to do was block up with oxalic acid as it got too cold too fast. This has worked really well. So I'll just modify it a little bit so that insulation stays on the nozzle and it should be good. Anyway, that's the last mite treatment in for this yard. Next thing for this yard will be getting the bee cozies on, mouse guards on, and be done with it. It's been so warm that we haven't needed the mouse guards yet because the bees haven't been clustering more than the occasional night. But now we're getting nights in the 20s and days in the 40s. We're going to see mice moving in, and this yard in particular needs help making sure mice stay out. I had a lot of mice in this yard last year. They're getting in the upper entrances as well, which is almost unheard of in my other yards. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll finally get you a video out there published today. I hope, maybe tomorrow. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time.